Before we break it all down, I want your take. Is Terrence Bud Crawford now the best fighter on the planet pound for pound? Does this latest performance put him in a league of his own among modern greats? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you love real boxing coverage, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss the biggest stories, reactions, and post-fight analysis across the sport. What happened in Las Vegas wasn't just another main event. It was a kind of night that tilts the history of boxing a few degrees and forces everyone, fans, analysts, current champions, and retired legends, to reevaluate what greatness looks like in the four-belt era. Terrence Crawford didn't just win, crossed weight classes, defied the conventional wisdom about size and power, and walked out undisputed in a third division, 147, and now 168. That kind of resume simply doesn't exist anywhere else in the modern record book. Even those who once had doubts are saying out loud, "Bud's the best," one veteran said after fight. "Hands down, he's the best right now." You can hear the disbelief melting into respect. Crawford went up 2 divisions for a challenge most thought he shouldn't take, and did what people said he couldn't. He keeps doing that, turning the word can into a past tense footnote. Listen to fighters who've been there. A 3-division world champion admitted something few do on nights like this. He's worn back. He stood under the lights with the hardware, but he's never felt what it's like to unify an entire division, to hold every piece at once and know the argument is over. "I don't know that feeling," he said. "What he did last night is unbelievable." It sounded less like an opinion and more like a confession from someone who knows how hard this sport really is. No surprise that Stephen A. Smith took center mic on the reaction show. He wasn't tiptoeing around the significance. He pushed back at Floyd Mayweather's attempts to downplay the victory and made it plain: nothing about Crawford's achievement can be minimized. No fighter in this era has done what Crawford just did, winning undisputed in multiple divisions, and then jumping up to take all the belts at super middleweight from one of the most dominant champions of the decade. Smith called it a defining night, the kind that locks a fighter into the all-time conversation, whether you like it or not. He insisted that no amount of side commentary could shrink the size of the moment. The numbers alone tell part of the story. Crawford stood across from a man many believed was simply too big and too strong at 168 pounds. Yet Bud was strong enough to make Canelo respect him, and smart enough to use a jab and distance like a measuring tape and a spear. He didn't allow himself to be muscle. He fought at the range that made sense, and when it was time to stand and win moments, he did that too. Undisputed in the 4-belt era, at 3 weights isn't a line you casually read in a record. It's the headline of a career. Jeff Mayweather, Floyd's uncle and longtime trainer, didn't sugarcoat what this means on the other side of the ring. He said the loss will live in Canelo Alvarez's legacy, a fighter who was king at 168, who reigned as the face of boxing, and who had to swallow defeat delivered by a man who dared to come up to his house and challenge him in his own yard. Jeff wasn't cruel. He was honest in the way only people who live this life can be. Champions are remembered for peaks and turning points. This was a turning point. The stain may fade with time, but it doesn't disappear. Smith doubled down after the dust settled. He was there in Las Vegas and made sure people understood what they were seeing. He called it one of those rare sporting events that surpass expectation, a super fight that matched the atmosphere. He emphasized a true leap. In his eyes, Crawford effectively jumped 3 classes, given his limited time at junior middleweight, to walk into the super middleweight championship of the world. And he took it from a man who had squeezed the air out of that division for years. "I was there," Smith said. "This goes beyond a big win. This is history." As the interviews rolled in, Crawford's trainer, Brian Bomac McIntyre, cut through the noise. He made it clear that from their side, there was nothing left to prove. He didn't say Crawford would never fight again. He said the respect is supposed to show up now without conditions. You could hear the frustration in his voice. Everything Bud has done, undisputed at 140 and 100, the dismantling of Errol Spence Jr., and now this should be over. McIntyre also underlined a more practical point. This was not about chasing endless names to satisfy shifting goalposts. It was about crafting a legacy that stands without breathless public relations. There was another conversation lurking in the background, and it burst into daylight almost as soon as the post-fight pressers wrapped. David Benavidez. For years, fans begged for Canelo versus Benavidez at 168. It didn't happen. Now, after Crawford's win, some voices tried to press that same fight onto Bud. Bomac addressed it directly. They aren't entertaining Benavidez. Almost immediately, critics started using an old word, ducking. The trainer's response carried context that shouldn't be ignored. The Benavidez fight was always supposed to be Canelo's to take at super middleweight. He didn't. It is not on Crawford. Fresh off the greatest win of his career, while moving up 2 divisions to become the stand-in. There's a difference between seeking challenges and allowing the public to rearrange the architecture of your career because of narratives that change by the hour. Timothy Bradley, never shy with an opinion and never sloppy with his reasoning, went further than most. He said a performance propelled Crawford straight into the top tier of the greatest of all time conversation. For Bradley, Mayweather mastered the game in his era, but Crawford just showed something else entirely. A willingness to climb above his natural neighborhood to beat a generational champion in his strongest weight class. That's the kind of risk that becomes history. Bradley's message wasn't a slight to Floyd. It was acknowledgement that Bud is carving a different path to the same mountain range. Roy Jones Jr. offered important perspective that cuts through lazy comparisons. When Mayweather beat Canelo, he beat a younger version learning the hardest lessons in real time. When Crawford beat Canelo, he beat a fully mature, deeply experienced champion away for years. Roy didn't dismiss Floyd's masterclass. He simply pointed out that the context now is different, and that Bud's achievement is extraordinary because he conquered Canelo, who is stronger, wiser, and far more efficient than the one Mayweather faced. For those who weren't convinced by words, there was the simple reality of what happened in the ring. Duke McKenzie, a former 2-weight world champion, watched the fight and called it what it was. One of the most complete performances he's seen in modern boxing. He said Canelo had no answers for Crawford's speed, precision, and pressure. He marveled at the calmness, the feints, the subtle steps that turned a bigger man into a target that couldn't find his mark. McKenzie recognized what the purists saw. Bud wasn't showboating. He was making tiny adjustments that piled up into a landslide. There's a sense you get when you watch an all-time performance live. It's a tightening in the air. Andre Ward tried to capture it. He called the night generational, the kind of event people will talk about 2 decades from now as a pivot in the sport's time. Ward's analysis centered on discipline. Crawford never let emotion drag him out of position. He didn't chase headlines. He chased rounds, and he closed them. Ward praised Canelo for taking the fight and the people who made it happen. But he saved the highest compliment for Bud. This is the GOAT talk moment for our era. Not everyone was looking forward by the final bell. Some look back at an old question with new eyes. Did Crawford beat Canelo more convincingly than Mayweather did? A lot of people think so. Even in the immediate aftermath, voices on the floor said Bud did more damage, won more rounds, and left less doubt. A thoughtful reply came from a veteran who understands how styles make fights. In his view, yes, Crawford beat Canelo worse than Floyd did, but that doesn't necessarily settle the cross-era argument. Different times, different versions of Canelo, different weight dynamics. He concluded with a shrug that sounded more like wisdom than equivocation. Some debates are supposed to stay open. Robert Garcia, who picked Crawford by decision before the bout, was blunt about what he saw. He said Canelo looked flat-footed and one-paced, a one-punch-at-a-time fighter, without the hunger that used to animate his best. Garcia, expecting a legend, he described the human truth of longevity. Fighters who achieve everything sometimes struggle to find the spark that made them who they were. Meanwhile, Crawford was impossible to miss, eager to make history, sharp as a razor, and prepared to carry a bigger man deep into the spine of the fight, where only conditioning and nerve decide outcomes. Garcia added a point that might rattle a few cages. By the accomplishments ledger alone, 3-division undisputed, a 2-division leap to beat Canelo, but has done more in certain categories. That doesn't automatically mean he beats Mayweather or Pacquiao head-to-head in their primes. Garcia said, but it does mean the record is not a simple arithmetic problem. And then there's the raw reaction from inside the fighter's world. Brian Norman Sr. said the quiet part loudly. Crawford beat Canelo up worse than Mayweather did. That's not a statistical analysis. It's a fighter's gut response to watching a dominant champion get his aura pierced by a smaller man who refused to play along with the script. Canelo had become a rhythm that opponents tried and failed to interrupt, but didn't just interrupt it. He turned it off. If you want to understand how Crawford actually won, you don't need a coaching license. Just a clear view. He gained respect early. Even before the first bell, he had already gotten inside Canelo's head simply by being what he is now, the undefeated, pound-for-pound #1 most fighters want no part of. Once the fight started, the jab established the math. The distance held. He forced resets with subtle half-steps and took small bites instead of lunging for a home run that wasn't necessary. When the fight moved into close quarters, he didn't concede. He picked his moments, shaped exchanges, and reminded everyone that the smaller man can be the stronger one in the positions he chooses. Afterward, Canelo stood at the microphone and acknowledged something many fighters never do. He said Crawford is better than Mayweather. Why? Everything, he answered, searching for specifics and landing on the whole. He listed movement, timing, feel, the way Bud denied him the sequence he wanted. Whether you agreed or not, you couldn't ignore the source. He is the man who fought both. Opinions from the outside are one thing. A man who tasted both storms has a unique vantage point. One of the most striking aspects of this story is what Crawford wants next and what he doesn't. He isn't chasing Floyd's 50-0. He has no interest in a 51-0 record just to hold a bigger number. He's not daydreaming about jumping all the way to light heavyweight to shock another set of scales. If anything, he sounds like someone at peace with the idea that he could walk away now with everything he set out to do done. Andre Ward even said it plainly. If Bud chooses to be finished, he's earned that right. The goals that carry fighters through their 20s and early 30s. Financial security, a legacy, a name that outlives the next news cycle. Those boxes are checked. But there's an elephant in the room, the rematch question. Robert Garcia said going back in with Canelo could triple the money and let Crawford confirm what everyone just saw. Fans will argue about whether it's needed. Fighters and promoters will do the math. If Canelo doesn't make dramatic changes, it's the same result. And if Bud decides a night in Vegas was a period at the end of the sentence, don't be surprised. We ask fighters to keep giving us pieces of themselves long after they owe us anything. Sometimes the most powerful statement a champion can make is to walk away whole. This victory will keep rippling across the boxing news cycle for months. It will change pound-for-pound lists. It will rearrange gate negotiations for other super middleweights and light heavyweights. It will renew the push for fights that got stuck in the gears of politics at 168. It will also